thing. So I don't know if you ever seen anything. I don't know what I seen, but in the early 70s, I took a job for a while in North Carolina. It didn't work out, and I had just enough money to drive back from North Carolina to Seattle nonstop, me and my wife at the time. And again, I stressed the wife at the time. And yes, I was taking NoDoz to stay awake. But when I got into New Mexico, if I remember right, they didn't have a speed limit, or it was really crazy high. And I had a GTO, and I just loved it. I opened up, put the pedal down to the metal, as they say. And all of a sudden, all around my car, Tom, it lit up brighter than day, where it hurt my eyes. Inside of the car, it was brighter than daylight. And the first thing I figured, okay, well, maybe it's a helicopter, and I'm getting pulled over for reckless driving or speeding or whatever. So I pull off the side of the road, and I get out of the car, and all I can remember is I didn't hear a sound. Now, I was in the military. I know what helicopters sound like because I was in plenty of them. So I didn't hear the egg beater noise. I didn't hear any noise at all. And all I remember, the light was so bright, it hurt my eyes, and poof, it was gone that fast. And I don't know what encounter I had, but I can tell you this, it wasn't a helicopter, and I don't know what could have lit up the area that bright. But all I know is my wife at the time was hysterical, going crazy over it. I was paranoid for maybe an hour afterwards, looking in the sky, wondering what, maybe it was a UFO or something. And, I talked to Peter Davenport about it extensively, and he said he gets a lot of reports of that. The same thing I see. In fact, one of his first sightings of UFO was pretty much what I went through. And it makes you wonder, okay, unless we had technology in the early 70s to do that, something was out there, something strange, something that could disappear that fast, instantly.
You bet. And, for people that have had true close encounters, they don't need to be convinced that UFOs are real. They know.
Oh, yeah. And, it's funny, also back about 6-7 months ago, Peter Davenport was getting a lot of reports of supposedly aliens on the ground. And before he even told me about it, I had a police sergeant. And I will say Portland Police, but that's all I'm going to say. He was going to come on my show because him and his wife and family were in Tillamook, Oregon. And he swears to God he saw 2 aliens walking off. They were on a gravel road going someplace to camp, and they saw these 2 aliens, and one of them noticed him, and he told his wife about it. His wife looked, poof, they were gone. Now I don't know if the guy was a crackpot, but I did verify he held a job. He was with the Portland Police for over 20 years.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I mean,
and all you can do is shrug your shoulders and wonder. You just don't know if it's true or not, or maybe it is true.
Well, that's the thing is, a lot of the reports are coming from very reliable sources. They're not the dairyman or the guy, working, delivering Pepsi to the stores, or the trucker. I mean, some of these reports that are coming in are from scientists, doctors, lawyers, high-up military people. It's just too many reports coming in, and they seem to be coming in more than normal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if there's a trend of people seeing beings on the ground, I mean, if that's increasing, then that would be, if it is increasing, that would be very significant.
Well, see, that's what I thought was strange, because I was telling Peter Davenport, I actually talked about it on my show before he even brought it up. And it seemed like all of a sudden I bring it up, and then all of a sudden he's talking about getting reports, all within about a week's time frame. So I know that he didn't hear my show at that point, and it just makes me wonder, what is going on out there. And another thing I'm finding, and I don't know if you notice, the size of the spacecraft of these supposedly UFOs have gotten huge. They're no longer like 25 feet or 50 feet in diameter. They're huge. Have you been hearing that?
Well, yeah, you hear reports of very, very, very large craft. I don't think that that's completely new. I think there, in past decades, there have been reports of a very large craft. But for example, the Phoenix Lights, if considering if that's a true UFO, that was a very large one. And yes, you get these reports of these, particularly the triangular shaped craft that are really, really large. I sat next to a fellow at a convention who claimed to have been in the Navy, and he was on an aircraft carrier, and he saw a huge UFO come out of the water, and fly up into the sky. I mean, no small little disc, okay? Something very, very big.
And that's what's scary because, I've had, again, people on my show, and some of these people, I checked out their background. So I knew that they did what they said they did for a living. They were very credible people. But I had two of them on my show at the same time say that they saw a craft. Now, they claim it was almost big as a Walmart store, that it was cloaking itself and all, they didn't see it. It appeared for a split second in the sky and it disappeared. But, that's when I started realizing, hey, this stuff is getting bigger and bigger. Now, again, it could be people's imagination, blowing things up in their head. I don't know.
Well, and there is that aspect of people's imagination. There are people that want to see a UFO, and they're going to see a UFO, whether there really was one or not. Whether it's a jet plane or something. There's always that aspect of it. But we all know in this field that although most reports are probably prosaic, there's a hardcore of truly interesting and anomalous reports. Somewhere between 1 to 2 to 5% or more of all UFO reports.
Oh yeah, and the point is, which ones do you believe or which ones you don't believe?
Well, I mean, you can kind of tell. Now, you do occasionally get the person that comes out that wants attention, and they love the media attention and the attention from the UFO community. And I won't name any names, but it does happen from time to time. But like I said, the people that have had true close encounters, whether it's frightening or whether it's fascinating, they're convinced. You don't have to explain to them that UFOs are real.
No. Have you ever saw one yourself?
No, I never have. And if you don't want psychic phenomena, and if you don't want UFOs around, you want to hang around with me. I don't know. There's something about it.
Well, maybe also don't look up at the sky and, how do you feel about these people go to like Mount Adams or go to other places like Big Rock or other places out there that try to call UFOs to come to them? What do you think about that?
Well, I'm skeptical. That's one of the things. Now, I'm not here to criticize Stephen Greer because I think he's a very important person in the UFO field, and he has been for a long time. But I remember seeing on a TV show, it was a 60 Minutes or one of these, 48 hours type shows, and they featured Stephen Greer and his group, and they were going out in the desert and they were flashing flashlights, to get the UFOs to appear. And the problem I have with that is ordinarily in the UFO phenomenon, you don't know where you're going to see one, you don't know when you're going to see one, you don't know how you're going to see one, and that's a big problem with that we have in collecting data in a scientific way and analyzing data in a scientific way. Because to do science, you have to be able to measure something, and you have to have a degree of control over the conditions under which you're studying the phenomenon. And we don't have either one of those in the UFO field. So when people come out and they flash flashlights or they do whatever they do to some UFOs, I'm not going to go so far as to say it can't happen or it doesn't happen, but I'm skeptical.
Well, I am, because it's the reports of, it seems like certain groups, every time they go out somewhere, they point their laser, light up in the sky, and all of a sudden a UFO appears, or all this appears, and it doesn't make sense. It would happen every time. It's just like if you go out, right, looking for a Bigfoot, you're never going to see a Bigfoot. If you're looking for a bobcat or a bear, the odds are if you're out looking for it, it's not going to happen. When it only happens when you're not looking for it, you're going to run across a bobcat or a cougar or something like that. I feel it's the same way with UFOs. I mean, if you go out looking for it, it's probably not going to happen. And if it does, it scares me, because Stephen Hawking said we shouldn't be giving our address out because we don't know if they're going to be friendly towards man or not. You don't give your address out to somebody that's going to come and burglarize your house. I just feel like, there's a lot of stupidity out there.
Well, I think we gave our address out a long time ago. But, and I know what you mean. And it gets back to almost the George Adamski days in some ways. They go to the Joshua Tree National Monument. The people, this is back in the 50s, and people would congregate and they'd meditate or do whatever they do, to try to get the Venusians to show up, that kind of a thing. And again, I don't mean to sound derisive. I'm just skeptical of that.
Well, I am. I just think of all these groups that come back and keep saying, we saw a UFO last night. It just makes me wonder, or they sit there and, I had a couple of them even send me video clips, and you look at it and I go, and I have certain software because, my two loves has always been broadcasting since I was a kid, and the other is photography. So I have certain software I can sit there and analyze stuff, and I can sit there and go, okay, well, I think you're pulling a hoax. One thing I will say here is that since all this disclosure talk back 6 months ago was going on crazy, it seemed like a lot of people were, how can I say this without offending people, were trying to make money off of it. I mean, it was a lot of people coming out with all kinds of books about UFO sightings and UFOs all at once, and just trying to flood the market, trying to make money. Yeah,
it's a social phenomenon, and there's the social aspect of the UFO problem. You were mentioning about people summoning UFOs. I did want to mention that one thing that I think does have interesting possibilities are the night vision goggles. And I think that people using night vision goggles, at these star parties, I think it's entirely possible you could see some really interesting things that way.
Oh, I'm glad you mentioned that, because back around in the late 90s, I worked for a while. I got out of broadcasting. I took a job of managing a couple camera stores, professional camera stores. And we used to import, binoculars, Czechoslovakian and Russian binoculars, infrared, that the pilots used to wear, the helicopter pilots. And we would sell them. And boy, they were sold back then for like $2,900, so they weren't cheap. But I took a pair home, and, I got tired of looking at the neighbor's dog eyes glowing at night and seeing their bodies moving around. I then started looking at the sky, and it shocked me. I started seeing things zigzagging in the sky, come to a stop, and then go at a 90-degree angle or a 45-degree angle after it made a stop, faster than you could count to 3, and then, stop again and go some other direction. I told the director of the observatory up in Puyallup at the time, I said, hey, this is going on. And he goes, well, we never seen that with a telescope. And I said, hey, borrow a pair of these over the weekend. He borrowed a pair. He came back Monday and he ordered a pair. And he said, you know what? I'm seeing things like you described. I'm seeing, it looks like craft out there that are either in some type of battle. They're going from here to here, stopping at such speeds that human bodies couldn't handle it. And the next thing I know, all the members of that group, were buying them. And they were all coming in and telling me the same thing, that they were seeing things. So I think nowadays you can buy a pair for a couple $100. It's well worth it, because I think you're going to see a lot of things that'll change your mind about UFOs really fast.
Yeah, I've heard those stories. I don't have the night vision binoculars myself, but it sounds extremely interesting.
It does. And hey, I just want to say I'm glad you're going to be able to go research, in the archives, the MJ-12. Now, is there we only got like 4 or 5 minutes left. Is there anything you want to talk about the last 4 or 5 minutes you want to get out there?
Well, like I said, I'm interested in the history of the MJ-12 affair, and in being involved in the UFO field over these years, we all